All right. So what are you showing me, Saul? What is this amazing chart?
Well, so you know that NAR, and we'll talk about this, they dropped these new rules for something they called delayed marketing exempt listings. And as I started with my staff to kind of go through all these different rules, and we know this stuff inside and out, and talking to John, what we discovered is there's so much nuance. There's so many things that aren't crystal clear.
I
And
like it.
so we created this kind of a chart. We were thinking of changing our coming soon rules, but now we've got other things. But I think that this chart just kind of lays out differences in some of these different marketing rules that we've all been living with and dealing with. And so, this is a work in progress, and it's taken us, good 6 weeks to get this far. And we're actually going to use this format to do other things like compare data feeds.
All right. So if I'm looking at this right now, I just dropped it into the chat. And remember, it's in beta, right? So
In beta.
John and Saul are putting this together. I mean, did I expect something different from you guys? No. Of course I expected this. Oh my
So
gosh. So tell me what I'm looking at here. Feature, it says feature at the top. You got San Diego MLS, current coming soon, and proposed coming soon. What's the difference?
well, because a lot of people were complaining about, so coming soon kind of like sprang off of CCP, right?
Yep.
Clear cooperation policy. And that's been undergoing lots of criticism and lots of disdain by realtors. And so different MLSs, not all of them, created a coming soon policy. And at SDAR, at the MLS in San Diego, at SDMLS, we've looked at our old coming soon rules and said, is it time to change them? Because as an MLS, we
Hmm.
don't want to get in the way of marketing. We want to facilitate, we want to help our members, but our subscribers and participants, but at the same time, we have to do it within the rules. So our current coming soon rules, and then that you can see down the left side, do you have to display it in the MLS? Can it be in an IDX and syndication? Can it be in a VOW feed? Can it be in
Oh,
a broker back office feed?
pause.
Yeah.
Pause. Because I want to make a distinction. And you guys have done this in the past, but I know we have new viewers and we need to be reminded. One of you explained to us the difference between IDX and VOW.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing you got to kind of realize is that when people talk about a data feed,
Hmm.
I consider that like a pipe. The data feed is the pipe, and then it's like, what goes in the pipe? And the answer is the fields, how many fields, what information, the payload. And then when you receive that payload at the other end of the pipe, what
Hmm.
can you do with it? What are the licensing rules? So IDX stands for Internet Data Exchange. IDX is for the purpose of advertising. And
Okay.
you're probably familiar with in every state, you can't advertise a broker's listing without the listing broker's permission. And that worked great until there was the internet. And then people, and you saw this, Tristan, on Lab Coat Agents, where people are saying, "I want people to advertise my listings," and it's like, well, you can do it, but you got to have permission. People don't seem to remember. You can't just because there's an internet, you can't take somebody's listing and put it on your website. Well, that was happening back in the 2000s. And so for convenience, NAR made up a rule. Now there's a history to it, but they made up the rule. They said, why don't all the brokers just give each other permission to advertise each other's properties on their websites? And if you decide you want other brokers to advertise your listings, then you just opt in, and then that's IDX. It's
Yep.
for advertising. Then there
Easy.
was there yeah.
So just to differentiate, guys, the IDX feed is what's sold to uh, Redfin and Zillow because they're brokers, so they tap into that IDX feed. Is that correct?
Well, kind of. Yeah, so you're on the right track. So to be entitled to an IDX feed, you have to be a broker.
Got it.
And if you're a broker, then you can get an IDX feed from your MLS, or your vendor can get an IDX feed. Then there was a lot of controversy over people who didn't have offices. They didn't have bricks and mortar offices, and there was litigation. And so they didn't have these, but they said, well, I got a website, and people come to my website and I show them all the property. And in Austin, they actually denied these brokers, these new brokers back then, eRealty, they denied them access to a data feed. And there was lawsuits, and there was a department, and they can't, what the bottom line was, a virtual office. You got to be able to do the same thing in a virtual office that you can do in a bricks and mortar office.
Got it.
And so if you're a member of an MLS, you can't opt out. You're a member of the MLS so other brokers can show your listings. So if they can show your listings when you walk into a bricks and mortar office, they can show your listings when people walk into a virtual office.
Okay.
So you can opt out of you can say to another broker, you can't advertise my listings. That's IDX. But you can't say to them, you can't show my listings, because that's the whole purpose of the MLS.
Got it.
So IDX's advertising virtual office website is created originally to conduct business, not for marketing purposes, but to conduct business. And that's the difference between the two.
And who has access to that? Because if you shut off an IDX feed for somebody, right, it won't matter because they have VOW. So what's the difference? Who has access?
Well, so everybody so for both IDX and VOW, you must be a broker.
Got it.
Right. So, or the agents of the broker, but we use the term broker, right? So you must be a broker. So now I can get an IDX feed. Now a VOW feed has a little bit more technological requirement to it.
Got it.
And in a VOW feed, they say somebody's got to kind of be your client. So they've at least got to register. So to get into the part of the website on a broker's site that has all the listings, and matter of fact, it has all the data except for confidential data. Go back to IDX. IDX is a subset of the data. In the IDX feed, there doesn't have to be everything. There could be 20 fields or 15 fields, or right. It's advertising.
But VOW has everything.
But VOW has everything.
So then, if I'm looking, and this is where I'm going, guys. So IDX, remember, Compass got their IDX feed taken out by the Northwestern MLS, right?
Yeah, they backed off on that, didn't they? But yes.
They backed off. But dude, to get it cut off for a day, that's crazy, right? Now, VOW, if I'm on VOW, like Real Scout's a company, they're on VOW, right? They created all these little connections.
Redfin typically.
Redfin. All right. So then if I'm on VOW, or if I'm Redfin or Real Scout, am I still going to be able to see the delayed listings here that are considered to be like not being syndicated to Zillow?
The short answer is yes, you will be able to see the delay. There's a story here, but yes. Now, Zillow gets an IDX feed. They could get a VOW feed. They're a broker. They have to put it behind a password protected area, because a VOW has to be behind a password protected area.
Ah, I didn't know that piece.
Right. And so, but they could get a VOW feed. And so if they got cut off on the IDX feed, they could take the VOW feed and still have the listings.
Got it. So that's an alternative then.
Sure.
And thus know the days on the market and the pricing, all that type of information that some of the brokers don't want to be revealed.
Yeah, everything's in the VOW.
Yeah, that's a big difference there.
Right. IDX's advertising doesn't have to be everything. The MLS, which means the brokers in the community, if they're engaged.
Okay. All right.
The people who decide what goes into that IDX feed.
So then the big news, I feel like as 2026 is going to get crazier, but whatever, we're not there yet. 2025, I thought we had crazy behind us, but no, right? So tell me, what's the big deal right now with Compass? Because I'm watching it happen. Robert Refkin's just openly going out. I think he's approaching it the wrong way, putting himself in danger and his company in danger. But he's openly saying, hey, this is how it's going to work if you're with Compass. In fact, we're going to continue to push this. And then you've got EXP and Zillow. And now, what was it, HomeSmart or Next Home jumped in.
Next home.
Oh yeah.
Next Home, and they say, hey, you know what? No, we're going to be on this side of the fence, right? So what's going on with Compass? First, explain that to me.
So here's the argument centers on the underpinning of MLS, which is something that we've been talking about. It's called mandatory submission. And what makes an MLS work is we join the MLS and then we agree that we're going to put all our listings in within 48 hours, whatever the period of time is. And I'm going to put my bad ones in, I'm going to put my good ones in, and I got to put them in a timely way. And we all agree. So now, since we're all part of this kind of group, we all agree to put our listings in, good and bad. What has happened over the years is the MLS has got it's the golden record. It's got all the properties that are for sale. Everybody knows they can get all the great information out of the MLS. You can do CMAs. Appraisers can use it. That's the MLS. Why does it work? Because we all have to put our listings in. And so now when I used to sell real estate, there always were parts of town where the brokers didn't want to share. And so they would take what we called office exclusives, and they would not put the listings in the MLS.
Yep.
Office exclusives. And then, matter of fact, the MLSs used to look down on office exclusives because it wasn't sharing. They were non-cooperating listings where I'll take the listing, I'm not going to put it in the MLS, I'm not going to cooperate. So it was an office exclusive. Now, what Compass has done is they've created a marketing program around office exclusives. And so what that actually stands right in the face of mandatory submission. And what they do is they say to people, their marketing plan is, look, before we put it in the MLS, we're going to put it into our private company network, and we've got enough agents, and we're going to be able to offer it for sale there. And if we can't sell it there, then we'll put it in the MLS. Well, that violates mandatory submission rules. But Compass has all of its own reasons why it believes it's in the best interest of their sellers. They call it seller choice.
Yep.
And
yep.
other brokers on the other side of the fence say, no, only a small percentage of properties benefit, and some do, but only a small percentage benefit from not putting it in the MLS. And pretty much just about everybody benefits when you put it in the MLS. Buyers get to see more properties, sellers get more exposure, listing agents get more exposure for the properties they're marketing, and buyers agents get to look for more. Everybody benefits when the property goes into the MLS, and most properties in the country should be in the MLS. But if you kept them out of the MLS, you could actually advertise, come to my website, I've got listings that aren't in the MLS. And that would be appealing to some people.
Of course. It's actually, we've tested it out. Beverly Hills, Malibu, of course, man. It's like, hands down, that's an edge. If I always say, hey, I've got homes off market, listen, the agency, which is local to me, the agency, Compass, Douglas Elliman, they don't have those. Would you like me to send you those? Of course, right? Yeah, what's your information?
Yeah. Now, if you do that and you get leads that aren't obtained through other sources, now you can say to agents, hey, come work for me. I've got leads that other brokerage firms don't have that we're able to create off of our own listings. And so Compass has a 3-step approach. They say, look, we sell high-end properties. And so we don't want to put them in the MLS, and we want to protect people's privacy, and we think we're going to get enough exposure. And by the way, maybe we just want to test the market. Maybe our seller wants, they don't know, a listing price is just an agent's guess at what it's worth. Maybe we put it out there and we test the market, and if we find out that we're asking too much, well, maybe we will put it in the MLS, but we got a better idea what the price should be. That's kind of the conversation, all right, behind this. And so now part of the problem with when you do that is, when do days on market start to run? Because a lot of agents, they don't like it to show that there's a lot of days on market.
Yeah.
Very and true. Also, not only the actual days that it's been on the market and didn't sell, that might give the property kind of a bad look. So how do we count those days? Incoming, what if we put it in this delayed marketing? Do those days count as days on market? And some people would say, no, they shouldn't count. We're just testing the market. And other people would say, well, that's not very transparent. And consumers, right? So there's two sides to this argument.
So then the other side, then, John, you sent me a link, and everyone, I'm going to share the link with you because I want to go into the other side of this because that's Compass, right? They're saying, hey, we got this three-step process. It's more like on the marketing side. We know we can get an edge, right? I personally don't think they're playing fair, right? And it's not fair and transparent, right? But Zillow now, John says, which I don't think they did it the right way either. But they said, hey, you know what? 24 hours. If we don't get that listing, we're never going to show it, right? That specific listing. Where does Zillow sit on this, John? Because that link I just threw into the chat, you really made an amazing article on this.
Well, I also got an amazing headache because everything is so confusing. There's so much stuff. There's portal wars going on with CoStar and Zillow and stuff like that. One of the interesting things, I think it was Ed Zorn who pointed out, when he dove into Compass, their approach to the vow is very interesting because one of the weaknesses of vow is any consumer could go there, and to register, all you give is their email address, right? And bingo, you're into the vow. With Compass, they make it much more difficult. You actually have to go in, and before you can even see the exclusive listings, you have to become a client. In other words, they give you the California disclosure, agency disclosure, where you have to choose among the choices.
Oh.
And that is very amazing because that's a better way really of handling a true vow, because anybody can do it with just an email address, but to register and become, after a decision made from the disclosure form that you're going to be a client, bingo, now those are the ones that are have the vow. And so that's a novel twist on it that I didn't know until I read Ed's article. He's the attorney for the CRMLS.
Got it. That's the one you sent earlier on, right?
Yeah, I mean, earlier on, but what we just published yesterday in the Data Advocate was an article that's talking about the pressure on an MLS. Is this the end of MLSs? No, it's not. MLSs can do a lot of good. And in that, I quoted maybe 10 or 15 recognized people, their view on whether it's pro or con, with CCP or not. And there are a lot of interesting quotes in there and some good links. So if anybody goes to that dataadvocate.com, it'll be the featured article.
So I think people have to keep in mind, and people kind of lose sight of this or don't know it, that all of these big portals that have all the listings, where all the consumers go, they all get their listings from their MLSs. So they have an interest in maintaining the sanctity of the MLS because it's the MLS that gives them the oxygen to have these portals that get these eyeballs that allow them to monetize around it. So what makes the MLS work? Mandatory submission. What might hurt the MLS? People withholding listings. Are there valid reasons to withhold a listing from the MLS? Yes.
Yeah.
Do most properties probably not fall into that category? Yes.
True. Agreed.
Are real estate brokers competitive? Yes.
Yes, that's
so
it.
they're all trying to compete, right?
Yeah. Quick question. This is a good question from the audience, and then I want to show something really quick. Let me grab it. Steven says, are you guys talking about the buyer broker agreement that Compass has people sign, or is that some type of an advisory form? What is that, John? Do you know?
It's a simple disclosure form by the state, California. It's a state disclosure form saying which one you choose. You don't have to have the actual buyer agency agreement at that moment. It's just a disclosure.
Here's what it does. The vow rules and the consent decree by NAR in 2008 and the Department of Justice said that with a vow, you have to have people register and they have to be more than a casual relationship. They have to somehow be a customer or a client. Doesn't say you have to have a form signed by them, but it says they have to be a customer. Now in California, we've got an agency disclosure form and an agency disclosure law. And the law says that you ask somebody to sign that agency disclosure. And you know this, Tristan, you're a California broker. You have them sign it at that point when you've established more than a casual relationship.
Yep.
So if somebody signs an agency disclosure, they're not signing a buyer broker agreement, that would be better. But they don't have, if they sign an agency disclosure, kind of what you're agreeing to is that you have more than a casual relationship with them.
Yep.
And if you have more than a casual relationship, then you can make a good case for they should come into your vow. They should be able to come in and look at listings in your vow. You don't have a buyer broker agreement, but you have acknowledged that you have more than a casual relationship with them. You say, John, that's kind of the idea behind that?
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
All right. So we've only got 5 minutes because I'm watching your time, Saul. I know you have to go. I want to just show one thing really quick, just so everyone can understand what the consumer thinks of this, right? This was published April 14th. So it was 8 days ago or so. It says new Zillow policy will help protect home buyers and sellers from anti-consumer private listing networks, right? This is by the Consumer Policy Center. And look at the very first sentence they use as a title. DOJ should weigh in to ensure buyer access to listings and to check big broker manipulation of sellers, right? Look at the strong word, manipulation of sellers, right? And look at the very first paragraph. It says, this initiative represents an effort to stop or at least slow down the efforts of Compass, right? And I'll send this over to you guys so you guys can read this. But
so always consider the source, Tristan.
Yep.
Right.
And the source is the entity that published that is a spinoff of the Consumer Federation of America.
Right.
And it's and Steve Brobeck. And these people have been around since John and I were dealing with buyer brokerage in this what years were those, John? In the 1980s and 1990s.
1984.
So these people are notoriously for openness.
Yep.
And that quote was by Wendy Gilch, I think, who very much is a buyer advocate. And so, yes, you're going to find people on both sides of the fence of this particular issue. Now, somebody said in New York, an agency disclosure is not a contract. We're not talking about a contract. We're saying to let somebody into your vow, the more that you can establish a relationship beyond casual. That doesn't mean a contract with them. A disclosure in California, an agency disclosure in particular, indicates more than a casual relationship.
Closer to a client.
They're getting closer. They're not there yet. There's no obligation, but both parties have recognized that this is more than a casual relationship. And so there's going to be less pushback that these people shouldn't be admitted to your vow.
All right, 3 minutes, Saul, and then John. What the hell happens next? So what are you guys hearing in the...
So March 25th, NAR dropped the delayed marketing exempt listing. It doesn't have to be implemented until September 30th. That chart that I showed you, we kind of outlined the things you can and can't do. So now all of a sudden, where you couldn't in a coming soon or a pre-market listing, you can put up a sign, you can tell other brokers about it, they can show the properties. There are things you can do. Now, some of this might change before September 30th. So I would say watch how MLSs now begin to either adopt or not the DMEL, the delayed marketing exempt listing. That's going to give us plenty to talk about until September.
Got it. And let me put up the chart one more time, and then I'll go to you. John, let me grab this. And in that chart, everyone, there's a line by NAR. Well, it's not by NAR, but it's John and Saul made the little NAR line. You can follow that one because remember, NAR is allowing the MLSs to determine how this delayed exempt listing thing is going to work locally.
Yeah.
But just remember
This
that.
is, if you go to sdmls.com, we've actually published this on our MLS website. And again, it's just to kind of make sense of these different rules that are coming down, and people can look at it and kind of make decisions for themselves. And we put this up there more for an understanding,
Yeah,
because it's complicated.
it creates more clarity, guys. So thank you, John. What do you think happens next?
Well, my thoughts always go to the eyes that are looking at this from the Department of Justice.
Yeah,
You know, they saw what happened with the NAR settlement, where the people, tried to agree on a settlement, and there was a lot of disagreement and different points of view. Well, we got the same thing here with the CCP, and we've got the portal wars now going on, and they're seeing a lot of confusion. I don't know, but I could guess somebody there is saying, maybe we can help out the industry here and come up with something close to like a consent decree or something in which we can help shape what is best. Because, everybody's talking about the seller's choice. What's left out of the dialogue is what's the buyer's choice. A buyer looking for a property, especially an unrepresented buyer, has no real choices. They're almost forced to go to the listing office in order to be able to see a property. And so I think there's going to be a little more emphasis on, shouldn't something about buyer's choice come into this dialogue and narrative?
perfect. I put up the link. John, I agree with you on that. And I put up the link to two things. Number one, the Google Drive for the chart, and then the data advocate link to the article that John wrote. By the way, he put a lot of love and effort into it. And if you've read any of John's articles, they're like mini books, but they're full of amazing information. So read it, but take your time, digest it. Guys, I think this is what's going to happen. I got a minute. I think the DOJ, I agree. The DOJ is definitely looking at this, especially with what you guys pointed out 2 weeks ago to me and to all of us, which was some people in the DOJ are out to get NAR and don't agree with how NAR works in general. So this is definitely an in, but I think what happens is if the Consumer Privacy Network or Consumer Protection Bureau, whoever the hell these people are, if they keep on pointing out that Compass is doing something that's manipulation of seller of some sorts, I think the DOJ could go after Compass and those companies that are similar to that. So that's crazy.
Yeah, well, actually, Homes.com actually told everybody to,
I know.
right? Didn't they? And so
That was
there is a phrase we use. It's informed consent. What seller in their right mind, with few exceptions, would say, I don't want exposure
Yeah.
for my property? Now, if they understand what that means, then
Yeah.
great. But the DOJ, typically the government steps in and says, you might think you understand it, but you don't. We're the government and we're here to protect you.
Yeah. I agree. Guys, thank you so much. Saul, thank you for this. We'll see you in 2 weeks. John, thank you for being on. Everybody else,
Take care.
Thank you.